Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Childs back here again. Hope you're doing really well on this Monday. With the end of the season, with the Club World Cup on the horizon too, there's obviously going to be a lot of transfer discourse, reaction news, twists and turns across this summer, and that's what today's show is all about. We've got tons to cover. Jamie Gittens, we're going to be talking about Liam Delap, Hugo Ekitike, the potential outgoings and more. So we've got a lot to cover, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of these names that we're going to be repeating over the course of this summer and see how Chelsea do over a very busy but big summer transfer window. Just to say quickly, if you haven't already, please go and check out first part of my convo end of season review with the brilliant Joe Tweeds. If you want to listen to the full convo, about an hour and a half, almost an hour and a half, talking about Chelsea, the 24-25 season and beyond, please go to the podcast feed. You can listen to the full thing now, but I will be releasing that convo in parts on YouTube if you want to wait for that. And as well, there will be more end of season content coming this week. I've got my end of season player ratings and as well reacting to my pre-season predictions. Many people have done it, so I'm going to be doing it as well and seeing how probably terrible my pre-season predictions regarding Chelsea were. So please stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe. Please share the podcast around with friends and family if you want to get more people involved, and subscribe to all of the content that's coming your way regarding Chelsea over the summer. So the best place to start is obviously Jamie Gittens. We know that Liam Delap is imminent. We know he's about to sign for Chelsea. We'll react to that when it's officially announced. Knowing my luck and this time of the year and doing this long enough, probably he'll be announced literally right now as I'm recording this. But Jamie Gittens is another name that's been linked to Chelsea pretty consistently, the Borussia Dortmund winger. Telegraph reporting via Mike McGrath that Chelsea are looking to potentially sign him. He has been one of those young English talents that have gone to the Bundesliga to try and develop quickly. He's been there since 2020. Apparently, Chelsea inquired about Gittens way back in January. I believe we spoke about that at the time, and it's understood they have approached the German club about making a deal in this window. The England under-21 winger, who spent time in Chelsea's academy as a child, has been expected to attract bids of more than 50 million this summer. It is also linked to the future of Jadon Sancho, whether Chelsea keep or sell Jadon Sancho. I think a big question is whether it would be Sancho staying, and Sancho staying or going doesn't relate to whether we sign Gittens or not. I think that's a big question for me. And still conflicting thoughts amongst Chelsea fans that I speak to about whether to keep Jadon Sancho. I know many of us maybe are a little bit blighted, a little bit influenced by his involvement in the Europa Conference League final and what he did there, but still interested to hear your thoughts on whether you'd keep Sancho or not. But in the case of Gittens, cards on the table, I'm not an expert about the player other than, cursory glances or kind of highlights or watching Dortmund throughout the season. I'm not one of these people who claims to be an expert on every single player. I'm always a bit suspicious of people who say they are at every club and every corner of the world, because I'm like, well, you must have no time to do anything else in your life, because it's just impossible to stay. It's hard enough to try and cover just one club. But there are people obviously who know a lot more about Gittens, and if this develops into serious, obviously we will look much more closely at Gittens and what he could provide. But just an overview from Connor Holden, a Chelsea analyst who I want to bring onto the show this summer. Just talking about him and some of the work he's done on Gittens before. He says extremely direct, carries towards the box with conviction. One of the things I like he mentions here is a shoot first archetype, something we desperately need from the left. Shot choice could use some improvement, but think this scopes nicely in the next few years. I agree with that, especially from the left side. And just speaking about Jadon Sancho, it's one of our biggest frustrations, pet peeves, about mine, but I'm sure for a lot of you. Sancho, the positions he gets himself into, and even you could argue about Pedro Neto as well, getting a wide player that gets himself into the box but then doesn't take many shots is really frustrating. Ability to go both ways. Wants to see him scale up in terms of creative variety, especially with his passing. But the key thing he says here is goldfish trait. I always mention this with wingers who will be playing in a system where they have to force the issue and play 1v1. Have to have self-belief and trust in what they are doing can do. And he said the same about Noni. I feel like that's the big point of translating your skills from one league, one club, one style of football to another. That's the big thing across any position, but particularly attacking positions. It's one of the things that was concerning for some people about us signing Pedro Neto, and arguably has been exposed over the course of the season, is Pedro Neto at Wolves played in a counter-attacking system where, as a winger, didn't have a lot of the ball, but he was asked to use his space in his speed and a lot of space, and obviously that made him a very devastating player. And we've seen it at times with glimpses at Chelsea, but he moves to Chelsea, a ball-dominant team, and suddenly he's getting the ball from a starting position with defenders right on top of him, and he has to make very quick decisions. That is something you have to factor in with a player like Gittens. You know, what are we asking Gittens to do, and can he scale up from what he's doing at Dortmund? Are those translatable skills that are going to work with what Maresca wants? But as well, you know, football development is not linear. Like, Gittens may have not cooked the Bundesliga, he might not have been as prolific as Jadon Sancho, but that doesn't mean he can't move to the Premier League and scale up what he's doing. You know, I think it'd be flippant to say just because other players have come from that league and failed, that means you write off every single player from there, right? I've always stated that I think that is a little bit silly. It's more just like, does this player work with what we're going to ask him to do? If he's been developed in a style of football that is completely counterintuitive to the way you want him to play at Chelsea, then you might run into some problems, or at least understand it's going to take some adaptation at Chelsea compared to Dortmund. I just did a brief data MB overview of the 2 seasons of Sancho and Gittens does come out very well. They've played a similar number of minutes, but in terms of progressive carries, dribbles, non-penalty goals, XG and X assists, key passes, attacking actions, Gittens comes out on top on every single metric there. So an overview tells you that Gittens has been a more productive player in a different league. The overview of him is eight Bundesliga goals. 8 Bundesliga goals is not a terrible return for a 20-year-old in a top 5 European league who's also already has Champions League experience for Borussia Dortmund. I don't want to be one of these people that instantly rubbishes this, right? Because, all right, the name of Nico Williams stands out to me more. But, you know, a bit like the striker conundrum that Chelsea have this summer, and we're going to have a video specifically about the striker conundrum of Joe Tweeds that's going to be going out very soon. There's not the perfect option out there. So you are kind of running into a thing of, well, can you try and find multiple players to big up sort of those numbers next season? Or are you trying to find a player who's about to go into his prime who could scale up what they're doing in a Chelsea system with hopefully better players around them? Like that is a huge question, and maybe something Chelsea are targeting. And I don't just want to rubbish Gittens as well, because he is a bit like Delap from sort of the same think tank, the Joe Shields Man City connection, because there is a Man City connection here with Gittens as well. So something to factor in there, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a terrible player. And that doesn't mean we should write him off instantly. I just think, again, it's like with what you currently have there, left wing Noni potentially moving over to that side more permanently. Can Nicholas Jackson move over to that side? I think that's a point we've made before. Tyreek George, I'd like to see how he develops, and as well what goes on with Jadon Sancho. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts if you're more sort of adept and have watched a lot more of Gittens. Is he a player that strikes interest? I definitely think Gittens is more popular as a target than Alejandro Garnacho, who still seems to be touted as a potential target. I don't want Chelsea anywhere close to that, because, you know, Garnacho's end product is results at Man United in the same league as Chelsea have been pretty poor, and I just personally think that, you know, Gittens excites me a bit more than that. But if Nico Williams is going to cost astronomical numbers, you know, is it more prudent to kind of go for a player like Gittens, who, as I say, is already playing a decent level of football, and hope he can adjust quickly to Chelsea and improve the options we have? Another player being linked from the Bundesliga is Hugo Ekitike. Simon Phillips reporting that Chelsea have broadly agreed personal terms with the Frankfurt striker over this past weekend. On the club side, though, Frankfurt are still digging in their heels on the 80 million asking price for Ekitike. I know Jacob Steinberg reported that Ekitike's fee is a bit too much for Chelsea. And that's a big thing as well, because for a guy who is not at the same age, experience and profile as Gyökeres and Osimhen, if you're spending over 70 million on this guy, that's a big fee, and also a big expectation level on this guy. However, I will again advertise and promote the upcoming video where we talk about strikers with Joe Tweeds, because it's not a simple kind of question and kind of something that you can just, you know, magic up out of the air. Like the perfect answer doesn't seem to be out there, or someone out there that at least doesn't have some red flags about them or some concern about them. Again, what is it about Ekitike that could be translated to a Premier League where he's going to have to be kind of your focal point. How does he work off Liam Delap? Which is why I like the idea of going for multiple strikers to try and boost up that area, and you get different options. And rather than it all being on one guy who comes in as the saviour, it's on multiple people who can maybe share around the goals next season. And this translates to Gittens as well. One of the things we don't really know heading into next season is how the goals look, how the attack is producing, right? Like this year, we really looked at that left and right wing and felt that the goals just aren't as good, especially apart from Noni Madueke. Players aren't producing as much. What happens if Esteval starts really strongly? I'm not putting that pressure on him, but, Andre Santos from central midfield, Enzo Fernandez improving his numbers, Cole Palmer getting back to scoring goals, the strikers themselves adding a lot of goals. So it's not as simple as the goals as they are currently are going to remain exactly the same. They will be shared about a bit. So hopefully that maybe can take the weight and load off certain players and means that, you don't need one guy who's going to have to do everything on his own, which I think is maybe a concern heading into the new year, especially if you're signing an Ekitike who will have tons of pressure on him. If there are other players who are goal scorers in our team out wide or from central midfield, that would be a big, big benefit heading into the new year. So the only other thing I wanted to speak about today was the potential outgoings. So we know a lot of incomings in, but with PSR, the squad, and players who clearly don't have a future at Chelsea, there will be players making way this summer. Jacob Steinberg reporting that a host of outgoings are factored into Chelsea's planning, and it's understood they are open to offers for Noni Madueke. It said here that despite scoring 11 goals in all comps last season, there is a feeling that the 23-year-old's development has stalled. Nkunku and Felix, who spent the second half of the season on loan at Milan, are other attackers up for sale. Apparently, up for sale is also Robert Sanchez, Georgia Petrovic, Renato Vega, Ben Chilwell, Axel Disasi. Fofana's fitness problems, we spoke about this before, mean that suitable offers for him will be hard to turn down. Obviously, Trev was a player that they tried to sell last summer. Dewsbury Hall, Chukwuemeka and Hugo Ekitike also available, and Raheem Sterling, obviously. So a lot there, majority of players there I agree with in terms of letting go. The one that kind of confuses me still is Noni Madueke. For my money, he has been Chelsea's strongest winger over the past season. I don't agree with the assessment, the feeling apparently internally that his development has stalled. I just don't understand it. You can have frustrations with Noni. He is not the perfect winger. He has some performances that are still wayward and raw, like a lot of Chelsea youngsters. However, the output he's had this season compared to who has also been in his position, I think is undeniable. And to try and throw that away very quickly, I don't agree with that at all. And my big fear with selling Noni is if a Premier League team came in for him, you'd be selling to someone in and around probably the top 5, top 6, who want to take your Champions League spot next year. And Chelsea, we want to be not just getting top 4, top 5 next year. We want to be challenging for a Premier League title or trying to get better in the Premier League. So I don't really understand that. I think that would be a major error on our part. So I don't agree with that sale. But Nkunku clearly hasn't had a future at Chelsea for a long period of time. Same with Joao Felix, a real waste of a signing last summer. Vega, Chilwell, Disasi, Dewsbury Hall hasn't worked out. Chukwuemeka, it's a shame, but clearly has more of a future probably for him. The best place is somewhere like Dortmund. Hugo Ekitike too. I'm a little bit surprised at Hugo Ekitike because someone we've barely ever seen play for Chelsea. So I don't know how much of a strong calculation can be made on his sort of talent. I'd prefer to see him given a chance. But pretty much it's all understandable on that. The only other one to speak about is goalkeeper here. Because apparently Sanchez and Petrovic in the market potentially if clubs are looking for a goalkeeper. I'd personally like to see Petrovic being given a chance. Sanchez had a better end to the season and his save percentage in the end was not terrible. It was one of the stronger ones in the Premier League. And if he can cut out those bozo moments altogether, then he becomes a much more appealing option as a Chelsea keeper than he was for a majority of last season. That you aren't just content with what's there because the season ended well. You'd actually try and improve on that area. And if Sanchez and Petrovic are both up for sale, then for me, you've got to be looking at a big number one. Can a big number one come in and change everything and really settle on that position? Because it simply is still one that seems uncertain, even if, of course, Sanchez had a positive end to the year. So I think overall there, the outgoings, I mean, maybe you agree, disagree. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But I think a lot of them make sense. I want to keep Trev Chalobah. I think he's proven enough that he should be a part of the first team squad again next season. He's versatile. He can play right back if you needed to. I even wouldn't mind seeing him at left back. Another point on left back too. It was pointed out, I think Jessica Frotter pointed it out on X today. I saw it, and it's a good point. Our left back depth cover isn't really there at the moment, like suitable natural left back cover, because Renato Vega left for Juve and wants to play centre back. Ben Chilwell left for Palace and isn't coming back either. So who's going to be the suitable left back cover? It isn't like as big as a centre forward, as big as a winger, as big as a goalkeeper, or as big as a centre back. Centre back is another area that is still up in limbo in terms of, are we going to go out for a player like Jared Branthwaite, Mark Gurhey, or someone else? There's been talks about that. I think that will progress. But, left back is maybe one that is to ponder and to look at over the course of pre-season, whether Chelsea feel they need to get someone in there as depth, because you can't be just pinning all your hopes on Cucurella staying fit. He's proven a very durable player for Chelsea, but I don't want to take that risk when he's been so important for Enzo Maresca and for Chelsea. So that's it for today's show. Please let me know your thoughts and feelings on everything we discussed in the comments below. Follow across the socials at SonOfChelsea. As I said at the start, lots of season review content still to come up before we reach the Club World Cup in America. So thank you again, and I will see you very, very soon. All the best.